I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for showing up on this Tuesday evening. Anyone here for the first time? And you're brave. Usually the first timers are all the way in the back. But that whole motley crew had already taken over the back, so you probably ran here anyways. Well, welcome. What brings you here?
Just an interest in Buddhism.
Yeah. Nice. It'll mess you up.
I know, I've been reading some books. And
So you figured that out by now. And you were still brave enough to show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Anyone else here for the first time? All right. Those of you who show up, why show up? What's the reason?
Like, the more questions I ask, the more questions I end up having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So the more questions you ask, the more questions you end up having. Yeah, I get it. I was always taught that when we ask questions around Buddhist practice, never to look for answers, just to change our question. It's just kind of like narrowing in on what we think is the answer, but then as we get closer and closer and closer, we realize that's not it either. But we get closer to something. That was a hand, I think. Someone. Oh, yeah.
You were just saying, why do we come?
Yeah.
Just still working on being a better human.
Yeah. Still working on being a better human. It's not easy, is it? Being that better human thing. Yeah.
Sadly, no.
If you all want to come forward, you're welcome to. You're going to go straight to the back. It's always the troublemakers that sit in the back. You know what happens is the troublemaker, you end up 20 years later sitting here doing this stuff. So it's pretty much how it rolls out. Yeah, that better human thing is hard. Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Is it hard?
Why is it so hard? Why do you think?
Not enough patience.
Not enough patience. At least you know why. That's good. What else? Why is it so difficult to be a better human?
It's difficult to change.
Difficult to change, for sure. Yeah. Even when we know we should, right? That almost makes it worse, you know, that whole ignorance is bliss type thing. Like when we know we should change, then we're just frustrated because we know we should change and we're just stuck. And again, then that becomes difficult also. What else? Why is it so difficult to be a good human?
Anger.
Say again?
Anger.
Anger. Yeah.
Other humans.
Other humans. Yeah. If those other humans would just do everything we want, we would have no anger. We wouldn't need to practice patience. We wouldn't have to change. Everything would be great. So I think the moral of the story is we're just going to blame everything on other humans. Yeah. Aren't you so glad you're learning about Buddhism? Yeah.
Desires.
Desires. What about them?
Some are really toxic. You know, it could be like, you know, like whether it's sex, drugs, it could be something to get out of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that makes it hard to be a good person because it's not always healthy.
For sure. Yeah, the desire, the craving, they're difficult. They're all there. You know, there's thousands of them, endless, you know. Probably a handful for most that are, you know, the strongest, and they change over time. The Buddha taught that there are healthy cravings, healthy desires, but none of us are here because of those, you know. So yeah, recognizing that is a good first step, understanding that craving, that desire, and then really rooted in where it comes from. You know, and you, in essence, said it, it's an escape. And we're often trying to escape because we're not comfortable with doing how we are. As we've labeled and judged ourselves a certain way, and so we want to escape from that place. And we tend to escape the things that are unhealthy. So, all right, so with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. Those joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. Feel free as you are to say hello. There's a chat box on your screen, glad you're all here. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. When you don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps sliding to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just try to sit up straight. If you're used to kind of like slouching and crossing your legs and, you know, pouting with your arms crossed, maybe just try to relax a bit with the feet flat on the ground or a cushion, or slide forward in the chair if you can't reach the ground. Hands are on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. And with the body still, resting, and with speech quiet, aware of all sounds, mind, learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer How do you feel always? Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And very often the present moment is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulty, challenges. So this practice is learning to be with life as it arises. We spend so much time trying to fix, change, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us. Hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time worried about others. This practice is setting that down and controlling your mind, your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And that's it. Meditation is free, Buddhist practice is free. Just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's it. And that never changes. Day in and day out, year after year after year. It's becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment of your entire life. That's the practice. And that can be daunting for some people because it sounds like, oh, it's just so much. And it is. To slow down and think about everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do is not fun. Especially if everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do isn't pleasant. Buddha referred to pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So if you have tons of unpleasant thoughts and say tons of unpleasant words and do tons of unpleasant things, then you're in for a fun ride with this stuff. But it starts with the awareness, showing up, and I don't mean necessarily showing up here, I mean showing up for yourself, giving yourself the opportunity to listen and pay attention to what you think and what you say and what you do. And not be so pulled into everybody else's drama and madness and chaos. Not be so impacted and affected by what everybody else says and does. But guarding your own mind. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, for those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free if you have any questions or anything to put them in the chat box. And I'll use the rest of our brief time this evening and just open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with.
No. Something that I am struggling to kind of square is the, the unconditional love that I am working on cultivating towards, all people, versus the romantic love that I have for my partner and my direct family. And so those two different types of love, whether they should be different or not, whatever, and then also the death that I've unfortunately, been confronted with in the past couple of years, seeing people very close to me lose loved ones, And it's not necessarily something that I walk around thinking about, but, you know, struggling to get to a question, but kind of imagining what it would be like for me to go through what I've seen some of my friends go through, versus like, you know, knowing that terrible things are happening in the world and feeling sad about that more generally, right? So I guess I'm not sure exactly what my question is, but I think about, I'm thinking about that.
Yeah, understood. I'm glad you kept talking because when now I know you said death. At first I thought you said debt. And so I thought you were talking about unconditional and romantic love and comparing that to debt.
No.
So my response would have been quite different.
Sure.
I think it's funny, there's I was going to say Dave Matthews, but I think it's a Jack Johnson song actually, where the line is something to the effect of, why can't the newscaster shed just a tear in their eye when they talk about people who die?
Yeah.
And that line has always like struck me as this very Buddhist, I mean all of this stuff is Buddhist stuff, but that line has always struck me because when you ask that question it makes me think of that and yes, you're kind of lumping in a lot of different things going on in your head into one thing, which is great. But I think just to comment on some things for you or anybody is to understand that yes, we have these kind of family members, loved ones, partners, you know, romantic partners, whatever you want to call them, and there's this thing that we refer to as love, as if that defines something, right? And then there's everybody else. And, you know, I think the practice of unconditional or non-attached love is to really, there are people that ultimately there's no difference. The difference is how we spend our time and the things we may physically do with people, right? But that non-attached love and respect could be there for the stranger just as much as your partner that you're with for 50 years. Doesn't mean you do the same things. That'll cause a lot of problems in many cases, right? But why can't, and this is more of a question back to you, not to answer, but why can't we have that same love and appreciation and respect for just people?
That would be exhausting.
No, it wouldn't be exhausting. Exhausting is what you're doing right now.
Also true.
Loving people unconditionally and in a non-attached way. I'm not talking about dating all of them, right? Just to clarify for anyone who might be new. But to love everybody along those same lines, with the same level of respect and care, actually wouldn't be exhausting. It's the fact that we treat people like shit and we pick and choose who we like and don't like and who we spend time with and who we don't spend time with and who we respect and who we disrespect. It's all of that stuff that's exhausting. That's what I think. I don't know what that's like, but it sure sounds good. Right? And then I think around the death part, and you've heard me talk about this before, that as the Buddha said, you know, there's birth, aging, sickness, and death. And when we lose loved ones, it's going to hurt. When we see strangers or, you know, people who are famous pass and, you know, every social media post, it's like, you know, you don't break down in tears for all these famous people that pass. But when it's loved ones, we do. And then there are emotional ties towards certain situations based on our association with maybe that group or that belief or that place or our political views that maybe emotionally are heavier for us. You know, the lives lost in just the recent in Kansas City, you know, and the parade there, you know, so it's just a tragic, disgusting thing to happen. So the heart's pulled for certain reasons. But it all sucks. It all just sucks. It hurts. That's what being human is that first thing the Buddha said, life is suffering. He wasn't lying, you know. But I think for me, when you look at death and loss and things like that, just beginning to understand that it's waiting for all of us. We cannot escape it. And with each moment, each day, each breath, we are one moment, day, and breath closer to death. All of us. And then everybody in your life right now, at some point in time, will not be there. This is the Buddhist teachings on impermanence. We don't necessarily like to hear that. We don't necessarily want to think about that, because that sounds miserable and depressing. But it is the reality. And Buddhist teachings is about reality. It's about ultimate truth. And ultimate truth says that we all will pass at some point in time. And everyone in our lives will be gone at some point in time. So for me, that's a motivating practice that says, if we know that's the case, then why am I going to waste my time being angry and pissed off at so much of the stupid stuff I'm angry and pissed off at? Why am I going to waste my time and not have a grand appreciation and respect for every single person in my life? Because you don't know when they'll be gone. And you might not have that chance to say, I'm sorry, or I forgive you, or whatever that might be. While you're waiting and working through all your stuff to hopefully get to the point where you can do that, they might not be around anymore. You know? So, the Buddhist teachings on impermanence, this is, it's pretty heavy and intense, but, and I haven't mentioned this in a while, but you know, often, especially those who might be newer to Buddhism, but it sounds like you've read enough to not be, you know, blinded by like the fluffy stuff, right? Buddhism is intense to me as a practice. And it's not this like, let's all sit and have, you know, like bubble baths, right? The Buddha took his disciples to meditate at the charnel grounds, the burial sites, to meditate on decomposing bodies. How peaceful and beautiful does that sound? Right? But he wanted them to see, like, this is where you're all headed, folks. So all that little, and there are large things in the world and in your lives, and very heavy, serious trauma and things that are, you know, very heavy. But to me, sitting with enough people over enough number of years, the average thing, I don't know, I'll just make this number up, 90% of the things that you're all pissed off at 3 weeks from now won't matter. Because you'll have a whole new set of things 3 weeks from now to be pissed off at. And we're all going to end up done someday. And yet we're carrying so much hatred and anger and like madness. And the only one suffering from all that is you. So, yeah. What else? Thoughts, questions? There's a question here. Oh, can you dwell a little on wisdom and ignorance? Yeah, so the question, the teaching of wisdom and ignorance, the second noble truth, the Buddha said, is the cause of our suffering, which is greed, anger, and ignorance. And we overcome ignorance with the practice of compassion. The practice of wisdom. And for me, when I look at the practice of wisdom, I've always found it helpful, instead of trying to recognize or identify what is this grand level of wisdom. The Buddha asked Subhuti, one of his disciples, to give a discourse on wisdom. Subhuti said nothing, and the Buddha said, good job. Right? So I've always taken that as a practice. I'm not looking for what is ultimate wisdom. I'm looking at where's my ignorance. And ignorance is ultimately ignoring the true nature of reality. I like the word ignore in ignorance. So we're ignoring reality. And the beauty of this is very simple. All of our perceptions are not reality. So by definition, all of our perceptions are ignorant. Aren't you having fun? Right? We learned about death. We're all ignorant. This is a lovely group, right? This is the truth, is that our perception, Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Zen master, passed not that long ago, said that nirvana, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. And when I look at wisdom, to me, this is understanding that I may have my views, we all have our views, but that doesn't mean they're right. That just means they're ours. And that's what we're stuck on. And to me, the practice of wisdom is to surrender some of those views at least, or I should say open up some of those views at least long enough to recognize that there just might be someone else who has a different view. Now you can fight and yell all you want about your view, proving your view, defending your view, proving they're wrong. You can spend your whole life doing that. God knows I spent enough time doing that. That also was miserable. When you begin to understand that every person has their own views, you don't have to agree with them, you don't have to like them, you don't have to take their views. But to me, wisdom is opening the heart and mind up to understand that everybody has their views. So, to me, less ignorance by default is a greater sense of wisdom. So spend a lot of time watching your mind, your thoughts, your words when you're wrapped up in ignorance. All your anger, your greed, you're just trying to prove that you're right. The stories in your head you tell yourself about you, the stories in your head you tell about other people, all your perceptions, these are just your views. And then we kind of stick with them and solidify them, and we don't actually open up space for anything else to be possible. So, yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
What does Buddhist philosophy say about our purpose here on earth?
So the question is, what does Buddhist philosophy say about our purpose here on earth? So, one of my favorite responses to that question was from the Dalai Lama, and he said, our purpose is to be kind. That's it. So I'm never going to try to come up with an answer that tops the Dalai Lama, that would be pretty ignorant. So I'm going to start with his answer, which I think is great, but ultimately, just to expand on that a little bit, when you mentioned philosophy, the philosophy of Buddhist teachings, the Buddha wasn't a god. He was just a dude. He lived 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ. He was a human, he was born, he was a prince, he left that life at 29 years old, he rode the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years. At 35, these 5 guys, that little tapestry above the exit sign is an image of him giving the first teaching at Deer Park, where he taught the Four Noble Truths. And those 5 guys said, hey, there's Siddhartha, that was his name, Siddhartha Gautama. They said, looks like he's figured something out, let's sit with him. And he taught the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering. Second one is the cause, as I mentioned, greed, anger, ignorance. The third one is the ending of suffering, nirvana. And the fourth one is the path. That's the Eightfold Path. Correct views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. All of that's on Google for free. And it, in essence, addresses our karma, our actions. But he taught for 45 years. They called him the Buddha, the awakened one. And then he died at 80. So he wasn't big on, in a god-like sense. At that time you had Hindu gods and goddesses. This is before, 500 years before Christ, 500, before the God that we refer to today, or many people refer to. So he wasn't big on this is your purpose for being here. It's really not there. To me, his teachings were more about, you're here. Why you're here, what good would that do you to figure all of that out? Many people spend their whole life trying to figure it out. What is my purpose? You ever seen the movie City Slickers?
Yes.
You know what I'm going to say? Life's all about what? One thing. Don't ruin it for those who haven't seen it. In the movie City Slickers, they'll answer your question way better than the Buddha, or even maybe the Dalai Lama. So now you have a movie to go watch. It's, who is that? It's Billy Crystal and...
Yes,
And who else?
I can't think of the other actors, but
Yeah.
Billy Crystal is the
Yeah, it's-
And I just love that teaching, I'm not gonna spoil it.
Thanks.
It comes from the most unsuspecting character you would think in a movie. So
Totally.
it's funny.
I haven't seen it in probably 20 years, but
Yeah.
it's a bunch of old dudes having a midlife crisis, and so they go on some quest somewhere to discover the purpose of life. But truly, it's the Buddhist teachings was not about what is our ultimate purpose. And that's why I love the Dalai Lama's answers of, we can all ponder why we're here, but the reality is we're here. So if you are here, which we are, just be kind. And whatever you do along the way, whatever you accomplish along the way, whatever you fail along the way, whatever you enjoy along the way, be kind. And your life is going to have a whole bunch of ups and downs. But I've never found much purpose in purpose. So I've never found much joy in trying to find some ultimate purpose. I think that just sets people up for some grand failure.
Wouldn't it just lock them into desire, because they're just, it's all about achieving the purpose?
Yeah, ultimately.
I mean, once you get there, then does it make everything better? I mean, I wouldn't think so.
Right. I mean, even exactly. I think that to paraphrase what you said for those who maybe didn't hear it, but you said, wouldn't that lock you into like some desire of trying to achieve some grand purpose? And ultimately, yes. I mean, this practice, even if we look at awakening, nirvana, enlightenment as a practice, these things are not a goal. So as Buddhists practice, you're not like trying to attain something. Because in fact, the trying to attain the awakened state, the actual act of trying, means you won't attain it. So I'm glad I could clarify that. So I hope that helped a little bit. At least it gave you a good movie to watch. Yeah, in the back.
Does Buddha have these things about breakups and how to overcome a breakup with your partner?
What was the first part of your question? Does he talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said the first noble truth is life is suffering. He told you from the get-go that was going to happen, I think that there are a couple ways to look at this, right? The question around what does Buddha say about breakups? Yeah. The Buddha himself was a monk, and the monks, the disciples at the time, and the nuns, they were celibate. They were not in relationships the way you're speaking of. So at that time, they renounced all of that. So that's one way to not go through a breakup, right? But that hasn't worked for you so far. So after that, he then began to teach to lay people as well, and many of them were going through breakups. And I look at the teachings around, I mentioned already, impermanence, craving, desire, attachment, anger, expectations. All of those things are tied into breakups. They're tied in very often to the reasons we broke up to begin with. And they're also tied into what's going to follow the next relationship. And so I think as a practice, looking at Buddhist teachings, I would ask oneself, where in the relationship, and this is just to ponder, the breakup, regardless of whether it was this person or that person that wanted it, what role did we play in that? In this relationship that we were in, how kind, how forgiving, how loving, how respectful, how generous, how compassionate were we in this relationship? And if, and quite possibly any or all of that was lacking, how can we, as we work through recovering and know that there's going to be probably another one in the future, how can we then learn from the breakup? So when we get into one in the future, we don't break up for the same reasons. But the thing about Buddhist teachings that, again, for a lot of people, they might not love it this way. I love it, is it's just real. Like, we're going to fall in love, potentially, and we're going to have a heart broken. We're going to be in a relationship, and it may end. Like, that's just what happens. Now you can spend the next 10 years hating yourself or somebody else because of the breakup. Or you can learn from it, experience it, feel it, and keep going. But the alternative is to try to escape. Very often breakups hurt. How does it feel? How fresh is this breakup?
Still going through it.
Still going through it, so it's pretty
It's
raw.
a wobbler. We don't know if we're still together or are we gonna break up, but I'm not really feeling it from her end as far as if she even cares.
Mhm.
She doesn't call me, says good night, or wake up and call good morning, to where she used to where now I feel that there's someone else
Mm.
that's got her attention,
Yeah, could be.
but she doesn't, she says that it's only me, only me, only me, but the actions of her showing me attention has diminished.
Yeah, so way more info than I ever needed or want. I always keep it, like, I almost cut you off, but I didn't want to be too much of an ass, so I let you finish. But the reality is, people move on. And that hurts. Right? I wish I could say to you, what's your name? Stuart. I wish I could say, Stuart, hey, turn to this Buddhist book, page 17, and it's going to tell you exactly how to deal with this situation. It doesn't work that way. Right? There's a great Pema Chodron book titled When Things Fall Apart. I highly recommend for breakups.
What book?
When Things Fall Apart.
Okay.
Yeah. And my suggestion while you're going through this is, and again, this might sound a little harsh, but, you know, coming from a Buddhist lens as well as somebody who's gone through all that mess, God knows how many times, it's not your responsibility to control her, to fix her, to change her, to correct her, or to figure her out. It's your role to watch your mind, your heart, and your emotions and be kind. That's your practice. Now you can drive yourself crazy for the next 6 months and do a bunch of stuff that you're going to regret. I promise you that.
I did it, it's no good.
What'd you say you did and it's no good?
It's no good.
It's no good, see?
Run.
Run, right? Get that book, When Things Fall Apart, take some deep breaths, Stuart, and move on, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's hard, I know. It sucks.
Seems easier just move on.
Again, I don't want to give personal advice and I don't do therapy, but I'm not trained for anything, so. Yeah. What else?
I have
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say, Stuart, it takes a lot to ask, something like that. So it's a good job, man, and you'll find someone that loves you just the way you are, your faults and all. You just gotta do the best you can do, There's always someone out there. But I wanted to ask you, like, when it comes to attachment, whether material things or with people, what's how do you deal with that when you find yourself becoming attached to something? Like I found myself, becoming, and there's, in healthy ways, like playing guitar or whatever, but I found myself becoming attached to, say, like drugs or like women or like, what are some coping, this is my first time here, so
Yeah.
I don't really know how to word
Yeah.
it or ask it, but in your life, how do you stop that, like, attachment, like when you see it or feel it coming?
For sure. For sure. First one said I was going to say this anyways, and then you even said I was going to ask you because I thought this was your first time here, right?
Yeah.
And what's your name?
Gregory.
So here's the thing about Buddhist practice, right? Here's the beauty of it. Gregory, who's here for the first time, your answer to Stuart was way better than mine. And this is in Buddhism we call beginner's mind, right? Is that you're not looking at it from a Buddhist text, from a Buddhist teaching. You're not labeling it attachment, non-attachment, impermanence, none of that stuff. You just told the dude, you'll be okay. So thank you for saying that.
For sure.
You guys live together? Yeah?
I recently,
Yeah,
I
good.
just, yeah.
I get it. So your question on non-attachment, I'm going to give you a simple practice. Often, and Buddhist teaching, just to clarify, and I'll close with kind of this thought. I think often, you didn't say it, but often for those who are new, it's detached or unattached is not the proper way. It's non-attached. It's not a cutting off of. Non-attachment is actually love completely, but without control. Okay? Now, you reference, say, addiction, things like that, drugs, whatever it might be, guitar. So there are healthy and unhealthy cravings, right? Playing guitar, healthy craving, right? Still a craving, but healthier than the alternative. The craving and desire to suffer less. Healthy craving, healthy desire, right? Cravings, drugs, alcohol, other things that lead to just chaos, unhealthy, right? So first is to recognize healthy and unhealthy, but to understand in all of them, we're still craving something to escape from who and how we are. And so the practice is to learn to be with the self, right? And almost like you said to Stuart, like all your faults, or whatever, however exactly you said it, like, hey, learn to love yourself, all the good, all the bad, all the ugly, whatever. Just love yourself unconditionally as you work through this. Now, the non-attachment part, often we look at losing loved ones, relationships, animals, as like these heavy things, and they are. But we're also attached to things that aren't so heavy. And I'll give you a couple examples, especially since you're new, you haven't heard this before. The best way to practice non-attachment is to practice non-attachment. Okay? Do you ever go out to eat?
Here and there.
Right? When you go out to eat, you get a menu, yeah? Or you go up to the counter or whatever it is.
In and out or something.
In and out, there you go. And you pick and choose. You're like, I want the double, I want the whatever. It's been like 20 years since I've been there, but right now I'm like thinking about it. So you pick and choose what you want when you go there, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I want the chocolate shake, I want the fries, so I gotta dip the fries in the shake, So you're like, you are attached to what you want when you wait 45 minutes in that drive-thru in and out. Right? You're attached. Do you see how that's an attachment?
I do.
Now here's how you practice non-attachment. When you finally get to that counter, and you're like salivating. I wish y'all could see his face right now. Say to the person who's going to take your order, right? Just give me something, whatever your budget is, $10, $15, whatever it is, and if you have any dietary restrictions, which if you're at In-N-Out, you probably don't, right? Or maybe there's an allergy or something. Just say to the person, hey, I want whatever you got, whatever you want to give me, $15 or less. And just eat the damn food. And appreciate eating the food. But we are attached because we think I waited all this time, I worked for this money, I want what I want. And then when we lose real things, people that we love, we don't know how to deal with that. So we turn to drugs, alcohol, some addiction. Yet we're attached to the food we eat, to the clothes we wear, right? How many socks you got? You got a lot of socks?
Yeah.
Right? Here's my other fun task for you, in case you're just not ready for the... By the look on your face, I don't know if the In-N-Out one, that's going to be a tough one for you, right? Socks.
Yeah.
Next time you go into your sock drawer, are they folded or are they all just kind of thrown in the
I have to do my laundry. This is like my last clean pair of socks.
Okay, are you like always just in all black?
I wear, all my socks are black.
Yeah, so this wouldn't really work for you, but, right?
Yeah.
I'm just based on the black headband, the black shirt, the black socks. I get it, I'm in black, it's just a thing, right? But the practice then would be to just take socks that don't match and wear them. Do you have any other socks that aren't black?
No.
We should go on tour together. This is gonna be fun. Who here is super attached to their socks. Okay. How many socks do you have? A lot, right?
Yes, infinity.
Are they all rolled up and matched and everything?
Organized.
Organized, super labeled, days of the week. Have you heard me use this example before or no?
Yes, we've been calling it eat the mayonnaise. Yeah.
The what? Oh, eat the mayonnaise one, yeah. So now,
For everything.
understood. So have you tried the sock one yet though?
No.
No, you're not ready for it, right?
I'm-
So go home tonight, unravel all your socks, mix them all up in the drawer, and when you go out tomorrow, just close your eyes and grab 2 socks and wear them. You look uncomfortable just thinking about this, right? So here's the thing, and I will close with this thought. It might seem silly, right? Like, what does in and out and socks have to do with Buddhist practice? Everything.
To be unattached.
To be non-attached.
Non-attached.
We want to learn and practice non-attachment, but we most often are concerned with non-attachment with the loss of loved ones, whether it's a breakup or a death, right? With the loss of things that are really important. I get it, I don't want to, no offense to your socks, right? Or your burgers. But these things don't really matter, other than our perception of them mattering. So this practice of non-attachment is, if you really want to practice and learn non-attachment, then do it with simple things like food and socks. Right? Because then it prepares you for real things that matter. Because if you can't deal with eating food or wearing clothes that don't match, then when you actually lose things that matter, it'll crush you. So I look at this as practice. Practice meaning preparation. Training the mind to not attach to anything. My master always said, learn to have no expectations from anyone or anything ever. Including yourself. If you can do that, it doesn't matter. And then ultimately you can still go back to wear whatever socks you want, it just doesn't matter anymore. So since it doesn't matter anymore, you might as well wear the socks you want and eat the food you want. But non-attachment, not easy. Alright, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, before you all head out, just a few quick announcements from Molly, our Dharma Bum post.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library, and if you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here, and we wish you well.